Welcome back to Produced by Henry X Goodwin. Today we are doing a mix breakdown. Me and my incredibly talented friend VENUS VULANI created the song SATURN RETURN together, which dropped May the 15th. And today I'm going to take you through what I did to it. First, let's start by hearing a before and after, just to get our bearings. Now, into the mix. So really all I had from her was
Don't make
the vocal.
Me go home when you lose your energy. Go out.
So she sent me the vocal and a guitar, which I ended up taking out and kind of replacing with other various samples that I found, basically. So first thing that I want to have a look at is those. All cymatic samples, but like just random ones from random places, basically. So kind of scene setting, quite a eerie type of vibe was what I was trying to go for. And again, another bass. So we started fleshing all of this out, basically. Little kind of main instrument. You listen to it without, and it's no different to that introduction. We needed something else added in, so we put that in. But these bits aren't actually that interesting, because once I'd curated this and put it with the vocal, it was all kind of there.
I don't wanna grow up yet. Not sure I ever will.
Something that could just sit in the background, that little vocal. We just wanted to create a kind of a quite dark atmosphere. I remember the original sample that she sent me kind of had a quite dark atmosphere. I wanted to expand it further, to have the voices in there, to have the strings down here. Just like add some extra texture and like these different parts to the track, so it didn't feel so rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. So sometimes with this, I mean, usually I find something that I like some of these samples, and then I think, okay, I do want to change them a bit. I want to make my own version of them with maybe some slightly different melodic changes. However, in very rare cases like this, you drag loads of stuff in and you think, oh my God, this really works, this really works, this works perfectly. And if everything's working, there is no point adding too much to it, you know. You could waste loads of time trying to find the perfect way to either manipulate that sample or recreate something similar. But when it's working, you might as well focus on kind of the other aspects of the whole production process, which is making sure everything fits, making sure everything really glues together. And that's what happened on this, basically, because if we just look at all the instruments together, everything just like sits so nicely. Everything takes its own little spot, its own little place. Creates this real sense of grandeur already without me really having to do much, rather than just flick and plop it in its place. And especially like when you first start mixing, when you first start mastering, when you first start producing tracks, you want to do so much, and you realize like, okay, maybe I just didn't need to do any of that. So that's the instrumentation. Now we come on to the drums. Now the drums, a classic, right? So the thing that I think probably took this chorus from like a really good chorus to like, oh, okay, now I'm really interested, was this kind of reverse drum effect thing that we have here. So let's dig deeper into that little drum thing, because I remember like the first mixes probably don't have this in, because we just like let it come out and then come back in. But this really drives the chorus forward. This is quite a nice little effect. So the way we did it, we first put raw, which is a distortion plugin, on the drums to separate the sound of them from the original drums. So actually, if I do something like this and take off, let's see what that sounded like. So you see, if I take everything off, we've got a EQ on here, just taking out the highs and lows. So the reason we're taking out the highs and lows is so that when it comes back in on the first beat of the bar, so here, it will come back in and it will feel like it's come back in and expanded, like a kind of audio mini explosion. So we took out the highs, the lows, and made a little dip here, because, you know, there's always something popping up in those mid sections, you know, those lower mids with drums. Next, we've got the BB tubes. Now here we've got Drum Room Crusher, and we've turned up the beauty a bit and the beast down a bit, which is usually what I like to do with drums. Is whenever I'm using this plugin, if you do get it, it's from Waves, I usually like to hype up the beauty a little bit, because I think it gives everything a bit more space. So we've got that, and then we've got from FabFilter, we've got Saturn, which is like a saturation plugin, I think. And here we've just got that sidechain compression. I love the sidechain. Obviously, you can just sidechain compress with an actual compressor, but this, like, it does more pumping easier than when I'm just trying to do it myself. It's quite a nice, quick way to get like a real pump to it. Especially with something that's reversed like that, that pump really brings into the reverse, because it makes the tail of the reverse, which is already going like that, it makes it go like vroom, vroom, rather than like doom, doom. So something that I quite like to do, and something that probably features a lot in a lot of different tracks that I make. So then you've got the raw on top, that distortion, which is just like the kind of perfect bit on top. It just adds a little extra layer. And then you're in, and because of course the bass has come out, so then the bass would like come back in here, and then you're back in. Okay, so doing that, and you see here something which again is something which I probably do on every track, is the first time you have a dropout or something, you really draw attention to it. Now the second time, I don't drop out the bass, and I make it a bit shorter. Now that's because when you're listening to a track, the minute you hear that first dropout and then it carries on as normal, you know that when it gets to that position again, you're probably going to be expecting dropout. So you don't need to go as hard with your second dropout. And again, like, because you then know the dropouts are coming, they just play in your mind like normal dropouts. So then the next time we actually drop the bass out is when we're going to add some extra drum elements in. These two percussion things, and again we drop the bass out here just to emphasize like we're going on to a new section, like, and now we're in. Another thing that's important to realize is with a song like this, the verses are effectively drumless. Like, we've got like some little elements, but they're not like drum elements, you know. And then we got a little bit of drums that's kind of building us up, building us up, building us up. Now, for the actual drum bus, something that's probably quite necessary to think about is the actual plugins on the drums as a whole. So that's how the drums work, but without the plugins, So we've got a EQP1A, which is just pumping a bit. It opens up the top, it pumps the low. You can hear it gets a little, it gets more on the high frequency, and that kick really starts to pump. We've got a Pro MB cut through. We don't need to put much cut through on that kick, but it's always good to have those cut through, those kind of mid highs. We got tubes in general. Again, very little beast, a lot of beauty. If you are going to get that plug in, that is how I suggest using drums. Again, this, that you hear that little frequency, sometimes it can kind of get in the way of either some of the lower vocal range, because she's got such a like beautiful lower register. You don't want something punching through it or making that noise pump past the vocal. And then a little bit of reverb, the same reverb as we've got on the vocals, so they stick together basically, just to tie everything in, just to act as glue. So you've got that, the bass. The bass is actually quite a interesting chain that I put on there. So that's it by itself. Doesn't pump through at all. First, we've got an actual bass plug-in on there, the Ampeg SVT-VR, like actual amp. They've done, Plug-in Alliance have done such a good job of like, and Brainworks have done such a good job of like actually emulating a bass amp sound. So we've got that. Then we just got to get rid of a frequency here. That's pretty much all that's happening with the EQ. MV2 is a waves plugin, which I love this good leakage, and then you just kind of adjust how you want to go. So good. Something that I put on almost every bass that I'm using, because I feel like it really pumps layers into it and like makes everything a bit fatter and warmer. Our bass, again from Waves, just a great compressor. And then we've got like just a standard compressor. And the only reason I use the standard compressor here is this is effectively not doing much, if anything at all. However, as a side chain, all of this I'm just using to pertain to that side chain. So I've got it side chaining with the kick. If I can get that kick. Now really, I just want a really short attack, really short release, because I don't want an actual feeling of this is getting pumped by a kick or anything, because it's not an electronic tune. I want a middle knee. I want my threshold pretty much always at 40, because that's going to take everything out and then come back in. Ratio 3, I don't want it to change the makeup. I don't want any auto gain. You know, I don't want it to be doing much else than doing its side chaining. So this is pretty much the track as it goes through as a mix down. Yeah, they're like the main things. The only other thing that I would say is worth looking at is the vocals. So let's look at this, the final hurrah of the track. We got quite a big vocal chain here. This is going on like all the vocals. So the first thing that we should look at is the sends. Now we've got this, the 1176 Rev A. Now this as a plugin is simply a parallel compression basically, which means that none of your vocals, if you've got this plugin, or if you've got anything with an input output, an attack and release, and you want to do parallel compression, just copy these settings. And it means that at a certain point when your vocals are going like this in terms of levels, like some will be down here and then some will be up here, this parallel compression will basically make it so that there's like a low shelf which none of your quiet ones are going to go behind. They'll all just sit on top, even the quiet ones, and you'll still get a bit of dynamic upwards, but you won't really get it going under that level. So we've got that on there, and we've got that pumped up pretty high. We've got, again, some reverb just to glue everything together. Reverb on that, on the drums, on the guitars, it makes it all sound like it's in the same room. We've got Sibilance and a FabFilter DS. Now these are both DS's, but I usually on vocals like to put one on the bottom and one at the top of the chain, mainly because I hate harsh frequencies. They keep me up at night. I think, you know, when I'm working on stuff, I think about it all the bloody time. So I like to get rid of those. We also have auto-tune. Now, as you'll probably be listening to the vocals, you won't be thinking they're auto-tuned. That's because we use very little auto-tune. If I do anything more, even if I think it sounds good and I use any more, I send it over to Georgina and she's like, I would love a bit less auto-tune. So we've come to the understanding that I keep it very, very loose with the auto-tune. It's great to have some in there because it just guides the vocal back into the key of the song. But A, she doesn't need much because she's actually a fantastic singer by herself. And B, she doesn't want her vocal change that much, which is a luxury you get when you are as good a singer as she is. Drinks break. Next, we have a standard EQ. Now, this is a subtractive EQ. And here, really, you'll see that it's pumping with the vocals. So this kind of acts as more compressor, but we have loads of, because the vocal wasn't recorded in like treated conditions or anything, was recorded like handheld as well. There are certain bits where it will flick one frequency, will go bam, 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 bam. So we've got this subtracting a lot. Then we've got the Butch Vig vocals. I love this plugin. God, it can really just transform a vocal like that. Here again, we're not doing anything like crazy with it. It's like everything's being pumped up a little bit by it and also like a little bit compressed. Then we got the CLA 2A compressor. If you're going to get one plugin, this is such a just easy one. Peak reduction. Again, for further compression, I like to put the peak reduction usually at like 60 to 80, but it just varies by track. You never know what you want. And here you'll just see as you peak reduce it, it will just, the same way that the parallel compression's keeping everything from going over there, this is almost keeping the lid on it. So nothing's going over here because it's peak reducing. So we got that on. Then we've got an MB, a Pro Q. Here, a little enhance, a little DS, because you know how I feel about DS's, and then what I would call as a standard EQ for vocals, something like this. A lot of people will bump that up. I don't think you really ever need to. If you're mastering correctly, if everything's getting mixed correctly, you should be able to actually take these frequencies down a bit, reduce DSing, and they should still be able to shine. Especially if you've got a lot of plugins, like I do, that you can put on stuff, you should be fine. So that's the vocals. So altogether it sounds like this. Mixed down, this is what it sounds like. A force to be reckoned with. A force to be reckoned with. Now, that's the mix down. Let's go over to the master and see how we took that into what it ends up becoming. Look at all of these bloody plugins, hey? First and most important is we've got our metering plugins. WLM loudness meter will tell me the LUFS, and you know, there's 1,000 videos on what you need to aim for LUFS wise, so we'll see what's happening there. Now, I always like to try an ozone mastering, which is like a kind of, I don't know, AI mastering plugin or whatever. Don't make me go home. Wait, let's go to here to see what's going on. When you need her, forget all my problems. I wanna stay out, fill every crevice, move with
with intention, a force to be reckoned with.
So you'll hear a lot of people say minus 14 on the long term here. Obviously you can see that we get to like minus 9.7, so the track as a whole kind of goes beyond minus 14, goes a little lower, which is good because you want everything to be pumping. Now here on it, let's go through the actual mastering chain itself. The first thing that I put is this is an EQ just on the sides of the mix, and it's just to get rid of it's hardly perceptible. Like you probably won't be able to hear anything, right? Now that's just getting rid of the bass from the sides. I just don't want the bass on the sides. I want the bass all to be concentrated in the middle for the rest of the mastering chain. Next, a little bit of high frequency limiting, again mainly focused on DS's and other sounds like cymbals and stuff. Now I probably was just experimenting with the LA2A and decided against it. Here we've got the Neve Legacy, again just standard kind of compressing and, you know, just adding some extra harmonics, some extra elements. FabFilter Saturn with a goated saturation plug preset. If you want to find this, you go to Best Of and Magic Mastering. Just chuck that on and then see from there, because you can mess with any of this just to, you know, make sure that everything's sounding nice and colourful. You always need some saturation on there. We've got another Pro Q, just taking out a few little parts which just aren't sitting right with you. Then some vintage mastering glue from the Puig Child. I already did that Pro Q. Here we've got the God Particle, which is basically like a compressor / limiter. Usually want to put it onto, apparently 98% is the golden rule. It's a really cool plugin that looks like that. And then we've got a limiter, just to make sure that everything isn't getting crazy limited, but is getting like
all the edges dance till my feet hurt. Forget.
Like you can see there, everything, I've put it up a tiny bit just to make it do something. So that is it from how we took Saturn Return from what was effectively just a vocal to a whole track, mixed, mastered, ready to go out. If you have enjoyed this, go stream the song. It's out everywhere. Go watch the music video. Again, that's out everywhere, and it is so good. And yeah, I will be back next week with either a reaction video or a song breakdown, and I look forward to seeing you then. If you have enjoyed, do hit that subscribe button and let me know any other songs that I've worked on that you would like me to have a little breakdown to. Not a dance breakdown. I will see you then. Peace.